and welcome to the speakers portion of the WomenETCclip1 2015 conference. My name is Lori Jennings. I'm the president of CRT Pro Search, and I'm this year's conference chair. So, yes, thank you. Before I get started, I want to give you some housekeeping items. I think I've tried to point out that the restrooms are out back as you came in and back into the building if you have to go. There's refreshments over here all day or all morning. And the Wi-Fi password, it's SMV as in Victor, -guest, and then accept the terms and you're in. And don't forget to hashtag WomenETCclip1 today. All right, with that, so yesterday we had an awesome day at the conference. Some of you were here. It was interactive, informative workshops on cybersecurity. Following that, we honored 4 outstanding women in technology with the Margaret Lynn McDermott Honors during the Celebrate Technical Women reception. Today, we are excited about the morning speakers, lunch workshop, and conference closing keynote with Lynn McDermott and telepresence with Meg Whitman, CEO of HP. Meg has specifically asked for the audience Q&A, so you'll need to start thinking about questions because she's going to expect to have some this afternoon. So right now, to inspire us, keep us on track, and MC today, it's my honor to introduce the WomenETCclip1 2015's Master of Ceremony. She's an inspired change agent in the world of imagination, creativity, and innovation in business, building a successful career, provoking organizations and individuals to think and behave differently. Her witty sense of humor, her drink from a fire hose energy, and her anything goes change methods have garnered her feature articles in Fast Company, O Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Triathlete Magazine, and Style. Yeah. She's been a visiting professor of innovation at the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business and the University of Richmond's Robbins School of Business. A storyteller at heart, never far from her pen or an audience, please help me welcome Courtney Farrell.
I gotta give this woman a big hug because this is a really big deal to put all this together. So we gotta give it a little love right there. I have to be honest, I have not stood still at a podium in ever. So I don't know how far this goes, but I might break it. I'm Courtney Farrell, and I am so fired up to be here today. This is a really big deal today. You might just be sitting there drinking your coffee, thinking about the stuff you have to do, and sort of type on your phone while you listen to some cool speakers, but so much more is happening in this room today than all that, because we are at such an important time in our world's history. We are at this great epicenter of a creative awakening, and technology is the tool that's fueling that. And the fact that you are in this room today, I don't care what your job is. I don't care how close you are to technology or how far away. If you're just here because you were walking along and it looked cool and you wandered in, you are in the right place. Because today we are doing etc. today. We are doing so much, and the most important thing that we're going to do today, and the thing that I'm wildly passionate about in my life, is awakening the creative spirit within human beings and people, and engaging the creative spirit within us. That is what we're talking about today. That is why you're here, ultimately, because you are a creative being, and we are living in this age of creativity. That is the language that the world is speaking right now. And as women, we are creators. That's what we are, biologically. That's the way we were built. All of the attributes that women bring. Love is our DNA. Love is the DNA of creativity. Support. Someone told me this morning, I love it, it's a special place in hell for women who don't support one another. As Madeleine Albright said it, it's not mine. She's cool, right? We like her. So there's a lot to do, but today I really want to talk about what creativity is. We have some lovely speakers who are we're going to take some deep dives into how technology can really awaken your creative spirit and solve big problems and change the world. So we're going to take deep dives on that, and then we're going to come back up to what the overall premise is, because some of you are leading teams right now in really neat companies, And you're like, that's a big pressure. You're leading people and you're trying to awaken their creative spirit. That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. So you're going to get a little bit of that. Some of you are just building cool stuff. Some of you are building cool stuff, and we want to just like make you feel so supported in that. And while we do that, the speakers up on stage are an important part of today, but really the women that are in this room and the men who are here, that is an equally important part. And when we break, I want you all to take a little cue from a Southern cocktail party. I don't know if any of you have ever, I'm raised Richmond, Virginia. And here on the weekends, you go to cocktail parties, and you walk in, and the hostess says, "How's your mama?" And that's all people ask you, and it's painful. Your only option is to drink, and you do so that the person that you're talking to is slightly more interesting than they actually are. So when we have a break, you need to go with that mentality. A couple of imaginary drinks to that point. Like, that person's like a little bit more interesting than she really is, right? And then you're just going to say, "Hey, what's your story? What's your story?" It's going to get down to the root of it all. So let me tell you this. We're going to talk about creativity. We're going to talk about awakening the creative spirit. And I was living in Dallas for the past 5 years, and I got invited to a 50th birthday party. This is Dallas. Everything's bigger in Dallas. Everything. And so, of course, Lyle Lovett was at the birthday party to play some music, because that's what you do at 50th birthday parties in Dallas. And so I was sitting in a chair kind of like that right there, and he's playing a song, and he's staring at me because there's nothing else, because I'm right there. For no other reason. I'm just right there. And then I'm staring at him because he's on stage. And then this crazy thing happened, and that is my creative spirit kind of left the bounds of my body, and his did, because he was performing, and that's what you do when you perform. You kind of like put it all out there. And it mingled a little bit in the middle of the room. And if my husband were here, he'd be rolling his eyes getting a cup of coffee just hearing me say that. But it really did happen. Like, it broke through the bounds of my body and went out there and just felt free. And that's ultimately what we want to do. It's just like, let our creative spirit break through the bounds of our body a little bit and actually talk in terms like that. Actually talk in a little bit of terms like that. So the first thing you got to do to awaken that creative spirit is you have to notice stuff. You have to notice stuff. Here's some things I've noticed. I was down at the First Friday, and here in Richmond, that's down in sort of the Broad Street area. You go to gallery, and you look at cool art. And on the side of a street, kind of tucked away, the streets are so crowded, people are just walking by. On the side of the street is a little boy, and he's standing there like this. And he's got a little sign in front of him. And it says, "Fartist." So I noticed that. I was on an airplane yesterday, and I was reading I was bored, so I was reading the emergency thing, where they tell you that you're going to actually get out in the event of a landing, whatever they call it, yeah, a water landing. And it said, if you can't read this, notify a flight attendant. So I noticed that. Noticing stuff isn't enough. You got to notice stuff, and then you have to be moved by it. And when I was living in Dallas, my first year there, I didn't know anyone. My first year there, I met this really cool artist, and she called me up one day, I'm sure out of sympathy, and said, "Hey, the mayor is going to be giving a conversation today on creativity, and he wants to open it up to the whole community, and he wants all creative minds to be there so we can sort of have this dialogue." And I said, "Oh, I would love to be there. Like, creativity, it's my thing. Sign me up." So I show up downtown at the Performing Arts Center. I sit in my seat sort of halfway through in that safe space right there in the middle. You're not close enough to be spit on by the speaker, but you're not so far away that you look like you're unengaged. And so I'm sitting there, I've got my notebook out, and I'm writing an incredible speaker panel. And there's a big red chair in the middle for the mayor, because he's a big Chicago guy. And then there's a big red sofa to his right and a big red sofa to his left. And there are 3 distinct seats on each sofa. And on this side, he's got Max Anderson, the head of the DMA, the museum there. He's got the creative director from the Wiley, a wildly creative performing arts theater. A bunch of other incredibly smart men up on stage. And then there was one seat empty on that sofa. And there were no women in the conversation. And so the questions started coming from the audience. And each one of these men who were just really unbelievable. I was fascinated by what they had to say. They would preface their comment by, wow, that's a really good question for a woman, but I'll give it my best shot. And so it began to be distracting because there were no women up on stage, and I kept thinking, like, the mayor should just call a woman up on stage. Like, this is so easy. He knows a lot of people. No, just call a woman up on stage. And then, like, it kept happening. I'm like, God, some woman should just go up there. And then this thing happened. It happens to me. I know it happens to you too. Like when you realize something should happen and you realize you're the person who should make the something happen, but you don't want to be the person to make something happen. Like you don't want to do it at all. Every fiber in you wants to stay in the seat and just be normal. But then you realize that you're not normal and you've never been normal. And that, right? And so then I'm like, well, I'm not hearing anything now anyway, because I'm just having this battle in my head, like, you're not normal, just do it. No one else will do it. You don't want to do it. Anyway, so I said to my cute, almost friend, I'll be right back. And she said, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. I'm not normal. And I walked up to the side, and I just tried to get my energy calm and not, like, this energy, but this energy. And when he had this head turned, the mayor, I just went and sat up on the seat. And he turned, and lovely, lovely Mike Rawlings turned and said, who are you? And I said, I'm Courtney Farrell, and you needed a woman up here, so here I am. And, he was very gracious and lovely and included me in the rest of the conversation. And somehow I didn't get tackled by his security detail, who admitted later that their heads were turned as well. But you gotta notice stuff, and you gotta be moved to action. You've gotta be moved to action. And you can't wait until you're sure. This is really important. You gotta have a little instinct over intellect. I know we're all smart. We are all smart. We could have a smart off in here, and we'd have everybody at the top echelon, where you went to school and the stuff you know and the awards that you've gotten or the big thoughts you have. Like, we're all really smart, but sometimes it's really just our instinct. You guys, our instinct. That's the heart of the creative spirit. Your instinct is just telling you, bam, that makes sense. That's got to happen. I'll tell you a couple things. Instinct over intellect. There's a company in England. These guys were investment bankers, and they wanted to make a fruit smoothie company. And they kept asking their friends, like, do you think we should do this? And one of their friends, they said, listen, what you should do is go to a music festival. You get 2 trash cans, put them up, and say, on one of them says, thanks, but no thanks. And the other, one of them says, keep your day job, and the other one says, quit and start making this. And so they did. They just handed out their smoothies all day at this music festival, and the trash can that was filled was the quit your jobs and start making this, so they did. Just like basic instinct to go with that. So there's another thing I think it's really important, and especially as women, is that we have to live by one rule. I only live by one rule. All the others are too hard to remember. It's a lot of rules out there, a lot, like HOV lanes and park here if you're a member and bring your pass code, and it's too much. It's too much for me. So I go by one, and it's rule number 17, and that is, don't take life too seriously. And the best embodiment of this that I have ever seen is in Hollywood Cemetery, which is this great cemetery over here. Tons of famous people are buried in it. I like to go walk through it and just read the headstones. And my favorite headstone, I'm sure some of you have seen this one. It says, Margarita Daniels. She always said her feet were killing her, but nobody would listen. We can't take life too seriously. It's really important, especially as we're leading teams. We give people permission when we don't do things perfectly. We got to let go of perfect. Some of you may have heard this story, but I have 3 children, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And then when the middle child was going to kindergarten, I was sure I was going to be on top of it. I was going to be Mother of the Year. I prepped in advance. I explained to her how it was going to go. You're going to get to school. You're going to get out of the car. You're going to walk with your shoulders back, your chin held high, a little sparkle in your eye. You're not going to cry, and you're going to walk into kindergarten. And I gave her a kiss in this hand, and I read her the kissing book with the little raccoon. I forgot what it's called, the kissing hand. And then I gave her an acorn in the other hand, and I said, this acorn This acorn knows it is going to be an oak tree one day. It doesn't care what you think about it. It doesn't care that it doesn't look like an oak tree right now. It knows it's going to be that, and that is self-confidence. It's believing in yourself and knowing that you're going to be a pillar in your community despite what your skill sets are and what they aren't, right? You're going to be this, and you know this in your DNA. You're going to put that acorn in this hand. You're going to put that kiss in. You're going to go. And so I drive her up to school. She opens up the car door. She takes her little book bag, chest forward, chin up, eyes sparkle, smiles. She walks into school. And I am so proud of myself, I can't even tell you. I have done it. I have reached the top echelon of parenting on this day. If there was an award, I should have gotten it. And I drove home, didn't even cry. I drove home just beaming with pride for myself. And when I got home, the phone rang. And it was the school. They said, Mrs. Farrell. And I said, yes, is Rosie okay? Oh, Rosie's great. Rosie's great. Mrs. Farrell, kindergarten starts tomorrow. And we have an orientation that we'd like to run people through. It's about 2 hours with you and your child. You'd come in with her. That would really be great. We have to let go of perfect. Perfect is gone. Right? Bye-bye. And it's important, actually, as we lead other people, it's really important. If we stand up in front of other people that we're leading and we say, look at my perfect hair, and look at my perfect outfit, and look at my perfect proportion, and look at my perfect execution, and my perfect children, and my perfect of everything, we do not give people permission to be authentically themselves. I agree. Amen. Come on, baby. All right, there's so much more. There's so much more. We've only yet begun. So today, this is a conversation that's not gonna stop when we leave. We're starting a conversation today, so you're gonna need some language. I know we have speakers that are coming up here, but they wanna have a dialogue with you. There's going to be Q&A, but it's gonna be really non-traditional. So if you wanna say something, you just need to raise your hand and say, hey, I gotta talk. You gotta throw your hands up. If you hear something really good, you gotta yell, brilliant. Just do it for a second. It feels good. Brilliant. Right? If you don't be like, oh, it's not, I don't want to interrupt her. She's got a really good point. It's brilliant. They'll stop and then they'll start again. Feels good to get a little validation in the moment. Not like 30 minutes later when someone goes, I really love what you said. No, like right then, like brilliant, so that you can hear that she thinks that idea is brilliant. Okay? A little bit disruptive. We'll talk about that. And now I'm going to introduce our first and most lovely speaker. And, bios are interesting. They really are. They're interesting, and they're true. They're true. They're part of the story, but there's such another story. So Lena, who's going to be up here speaking to us, she's from Canada, and her two parents were biochemists, and they were really disappointed, and her mother especially, for not going into science. I don't know how you could be disappointed in this woman, by the way. It would be almost impossible. She's come back into the fold based on what she's doing now at Amazon. Her parents were, her father's French-Canadian. He spoke French. I overheard her saying that her mother would never allow him to speak French in the house because he kind of had a guttural sort of, I might be making this up, but like a base version of French, right? And she wanted her to learn the Parisian form, bonjour. I'm sure he says bonjour too. Anyway, neither one of my parents spoke French. Oui, allô, see? We don't want oui, allô, bonjour. So I asked her about high school, and she said, we can't talk about that because I skipped it so much. That's important. I think that's really important. And she also is the byproduct of some strong women. Her grandmother owned a print shop, and one day a fellow walked in and said, I want to speak to the proprietor. And she said, I am the proprietor, and he walked out. So we've come a long way. We've come a long way, and I want to introduce Lena Trudeau right now to talk to us a little bit about global expansion in Amazon. So everyone give it up like loud and a little bit disruptive, like woo!
Courtney, that was awesome. Truly, truly awesome. I don't know how to follow that, so I'm just going to try and keep everybody's energy up, keep my energy up. But that was really, really impressive. I love the lessons that you were teaching us through the great stories you were telling. And, it's funny, some of the things that I'm going to touch on or really resonate against some of the themes you were pulling on, so it fits really well. But especially that introduction. I was telling Courtney when I got here today, I hate introductions. I hate long introductions, but I just hate introductions that sort of go over this litany of things that you've done or accomplished, because we've all done and accomplished a lot of things, and it's kind of embarrassing. And I think it speaks to something that's really important for me personally in my personality, and something I see in a lot of women, which is individual accomplishments don't really mean a heck of a lot to me. I much prefer to accomplish things with teams of people. I think when you accomplish things with teams of people and everybody moves up and rises up together, to me, that's much more meaningful. And so that's been sort of the hallmark of how I've worked and how I've navigated my career and gotten to where I am, which is a little bit of a circuitous route. But so thank you, because Courtney, that was the best introduction I've ever had. I appreciated it very much. And it is true, my mom's not disappointed in me anymore, but she was for a while. I still remember bringing home a report card that showed a number of absences against my classes at my Catholic high school, particularly my religion class. And my mom, she's so trusting. She's a lovely woman. She's so trusting. She said to me, "How come there are so many absences listed against your classes, and yet you have all these A's?" And I said, "Well, it must be an error. The only thing that I can think of is that it's a mistake." And she said, "Yeah, that makes sense to me, okay." Apparently my high school didn't have a telephone, so they never called home to check. But it all turned out. It all turned out. I don't recommend that path for everybody. It worked for me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do and how I came to do what I do. But before I do that, I wanted to just ask a question of all you guys. Can you raise your hand if you would consider yourself a technologist? So you guys are the engineers, computer scientists, coders. All right, there's a few of you here. Awesome, rock on. Raise your hand if you're in technology, but you're more of an applied technologist. So you use technology to solve problems or to solve business problems, but you're kind of in and around tech a lot. There's a number of you here. The folks who aren't involved in tech at all and honestly could care less like their iPhone, but that's about it. There's a few, okay. I think it's really important to point out, I was speaking at this really great recruiting event at Amazon yesterday, because we're trying really hard to recruit really brilliant women and frankly to increase diversity on a number of different fronts. So I was speaking at this really great event, and I was listening to a colleague of mine named Elaine Harvey. Elaine is unbelievable. She's an engineer. She has spent her entire life in tech. She runs one of our biggest product lines. She's just absolutely amazing. And I was feeling very, very non-technical and sitting next to her and thinking, wow, she's accomplished so much, and I haven't done very much at all comparatively, because she's just so brilliant and such a genius. And then when I got up and talked to a number of the people in the audience, it turned out that the vast majority of them actually weren't technical at all. They were MBA students and looking to get into tech because they think it's exciting and a growth field and a way to have a lot of impact, but they actually weren't technical themselves, so I made them feel a lot better, because you can actually have a job in tech and not necessarily be an engineer or a computer scientist or a mathematician. And so that's a wonderful thing. So how did I get into Amazon and what's my role? I have a global expansion role. I work for our public sector group for the division of the company called Amazon Web Services. A lot of people know Amazon, the retail company. Not as many people, but an increasing number of people are getting to know this cloud division that we have, where we provide basically, IT services, infrastructure services that are technical in nature, on demand, on a pay-as-you-go model. That's basically cloud. And we do that all over the world. We operate in a lot of different countries. But there are a number of countries in the world that we don't have a really big presence. And for our public sector group, which is all levels of government, education, nonprofits, NGOs, those are the sort of verticals and customers that I do a lot of business with. I go around the world and help open up countries for that business. And in the context of doing that, in my journey of doing that, I speak to a lot of really senior government leaders who are looking to leverage technology to drive economic development, to create jobs, to really spur innovation in their countries. And so there are some interesting places in the world. I was in Tunisia this summer. and poor Tunisia is having a hell of a time. There are a lot of really bright, well-educated, very energetic people there who are trying to change what's going on in Tunisia, where it's actually a lot of the IS or ISIL or ISIS or whatever you call it, recruiting that started happening there first. And there's been a lot of terrorism there just recently. So they're trying to take back their country and leverage new, tools and technologies in order to be able to leapfrog and get a jump on that work. There are a lot of entrepreneurs there, social entrepreneurs as well, who care very much about creating a good and healthy society. And so, to me, the work that I do in technology is much less about the core technology itself and much more about how we take these tools that are available to us and use them to solve some of the most complex and challenging problems that we have in the world today. And that's really, to me, that's one of the lessons I've learned in the course of my career journey, which is do something that really is meaningful, have an impact. Don't worry so much. There's that great Steve Jobism about, if I'd known where I was going to end up, I don't think I would have planned it the same way. You can't tell looking forward how all these things are going to fit together to get you where you need to be, but when you look in the rearview mirror, every step along the way was key to getting there. It's so true in my experience. As I look at my career path, right before coming to AWS, I was working in government. I took a role, an appointment at the U.S. General Services Administration because the administrator at the time, a wonderful, wonderful woman who invited me in, named Martha Johnson, who invited me in to play an innovation role at GSA, asked me to come and help her change some things. Turns out at GSA, the Federal Acquisition Service, which is a procurement agency, was buying about $55 billion worth of goods and services every year for other government agencies. And they didn't really know much about what that was costing them or how effective it was. And she thought we could do better with taxpayer dollars. I walked in the door to do that. I ended up, at the end of my 4 years, having managed a program for the White House called the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program, having stood up a DevOps shop, having hired a bunch of developers, designers, product managers, coders, and really starting a digital services movement out of the GSA to create much more elegant and useful services from the federal government to its citizens and the businesses it serves. So you just never can tell. Going back a little further, back to the disappointment my mother had in me, which Courtney described. My undergrad was in poli-sci and philosophy. And then I went to do my MBA. Worked for a few years, mainly in and around government in Canada, and then went to do my MBA. And because I had a very social science and generalist background, I decided to major in my MBA in finance because I didn't know enough about it and I thought it was hard and something I could learn, which is another really great lesson I've learned throughout my life. Take risks. Do things that are really hard and that stretch you. Learn constantly. Every opportunity you have to learn is something that you should seize. It's a very, very valuable thing. I got some advice very early on that score, and it served me very, very well. I'll just take a moment. I'm not going to plug AWS or Amazon much throughout the course of this little discussion, but I do want to tell you one thing because I think it's really cool. I had the opportunity to help launch a program at AWS called AWS Educate, and you can just Google it and find it. It's really easy to do. But it's the case that there isn't a lot of good curriculum on cloud computing in the world today. And the professors that are teaching it wanted an opportunity to be able to share that curriculum. And students that we heard from wanted the opportunity to be able to really use cloud technologies in the context of their learning so that they could get some hands-on experience. And so in May, we launched a program called Educate that provides free credits to students and professors who want to learn about cloud computing. Woo! There's a platform available to share curricula, so professors who want to teach and haven't been able to create curriculum for themselves can download the curriculum of others. And we also, through that, have opened up a whole bunch of our public data sets which I'll talk about in just a minute. We've opened up a whole bunch of our public data sets to give students real data to work with, because often they work with dummy data sets, which just aren't a good proxy for the learning experience they need to have to be graduating from schools like really ready for the jobs in technology today. And so that was, in May, we launched over the summer when not a lot of folks were in school. And as of, I was just asking my project manager for that program for the latest numbers, we have 350 institutions globally signed up, half of them outside of the US. We have nearly 1,000 professors signed up through the program, and we have over 8,000 students who are using this program. And so, and increasingly, high schools are signing up. And we've actually had some elementary schools reach out to us to see if they could sign up for the program. So, you know, there's a real thirst for learning. There's a lot of tools out there if you care to find them. They're not that hard to find. They're easily discoverable as well. So take those opportunities. They won't steer you wrong. Going back to my mom and the look on her face when I told her I was going to do poli-sci and philosophy in undergrad. One of the things I have the great privilege to do right now at Amazon is lead a couple of interesting programs. One of them called Scientific Computing, or SCICO for short, which I think is the best name ever. And they're pretty psycho. They're pretty awesome. And our open data program. And the purpose behind these programs is to bring, to apply cloud technologies and modern technology tools and bring an ecosystem around that to solve some really, really interesting problems. So for instance, we have a genomicist on the team. And genomics today involves really large data sets and a lot of analysis that just a few years ago couldn't have taken place. And that analysis using these really large data sets takes an awful lot of compute capacity. And it used to be that only the largest institutions in the world could have access to that kind of supercomputing capacity because it was so very expensive. So I'll tell you a little story about, this is actually an astronomy story, but just to give you the context for the price difference, the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research in Australia, ICRAR, is doing, radio astronomy research is, like, it's looking at deep space. It's extragalactic, so it's outside our galaxy. We're looking really into deep space and collecting an awful lot of data. And the research that they're doing today, because they're using an infrastructure as a service platform, is costing them about $2,000 a month. In order to do that kind of research with the traditional method of buying and setting up hardware and software, they would have had to spend, they told us, $1.75 million. So think about the democratizing force of that kind of technology, and then you'll understand exactly why I chose a path, not being a technologist myself, of wanting to leverage these tools and capabilities in order to do world-changing things. Going back to genomics for just a minute, we just, and our data program, we just onboarded our most recent public data set. We go out into the world and search for the world's most valuable data sets, and we seek to put them on our platform and make them free and available to anyone who wants to use them for research and collaboration in order to solve big problems. And we just onboarded, maybe 2 weeks ago, the 3,000 rice genome data set. The International Rice Research Institute, based in the Philippines, maintains this data set, and we worked with them to load it onto our platform to make it more broadly available, because rice feeds the majority of the world's poor population, and it represents about 20% of the calories consumed in the world today, rice. And in a lot of places, rice is under threat. Certain genetic variations are very susceptible to disease. You know, you can get crop failures. And so we want to build an ecosystem around that data set that's interested in figuring out how to make sure we can feed everybody in the world for a long time to come. And that kind of stuff is really important to me. Now, so I'm working with scientists, so my mom's great, she's good, she's really cool with me now. But the point there is, if I had sat back a long time ago with the skill sets that I had and imagined that I might be doing global expansion and supporting some of these global programs for one of the highest growth, largest companies in the world today, I would have been so intimidated. I don't know that I ever would have thought I could get there. But here I am. And so there's a really great story behind that of seizing opportunity, thinking big, like really thinking big about what you can accomplish and what's possible in the world today, and then just going after it. Building coalitions and ecosystems and teams around that, because failure is inevitable. Mistakes are going to happen, which is all part of learning, by the way, right? So everybody should be good with that. Just the point there is to learn from those mistakes and to make sure that you, in that learning, don't repeat the same mistakes the same way again. But of course that happens, and actually mistakes are responsible for some of the great innovations in the world today. Have you guys all heard the Wikipedia mistake story, the failure story around that Jimmy Wales tells? Okay, so a few years back I got to hear Jimmy Wales testify in front of Congress, and he talked about the importance of acceptance of failure and celebration of failure if we're really going to innovate in our country. And he talked about Wikipedia and standing up that business model for the first time as actually a model that relied on paid experts. So his model relied on paid experts in its initial phases to populate these pages of an online encyclopedia. And that was in the early 2000s. and I don't know if anyone remembers, but back in 2000, 2002, there was a great big crash in the stock market, you know, a pretty deep recession, probably a full-on depression in some parts of IT and telecommunications. And he lost all his money, and he didn't have money to pay experts. And he was trying to decide whether he could continue on with his business model. And so he decided to try relying on a volunteer model for his online encyclopedia, and we have Wikipedia today because of that, because he failed. If he hadn't failed, if he hadn't lost all his money and failed in his first model, we might not have what we have today, which is an incredible resource that serves the entire world. So failure is important. I'm going to add a couple more thoughts. So these are some of the things I've learned. I was asked to think about if I was giving advice to other people, what advice I would give. And I don't think I'm very good at giving advice. It doesn't stop me from doing it, but I'm not the greatest at it. So I went to a bunch of my female colleagues. I sent out a note a few days ago to a bunch of really awesome women that I get the great chance to work with, and said, if you were giving advice, what advice would you give? And so I'm going to tell you what they said. I picked the best stuff. The first one's hire better than you. When you build teams, bring people on who are better than you. There's a really interesting saying that the folks I worked with at GSA used to talk about, all these like brilliant designers and developers that came into government, quit their high-paying day jobs and came into government to do public service. Used to say, they said, A people hire A+ people, and B people hire C people. Don't be threatened, right? Don't be threatened. When you hire people who are better than yourself, you create an unbelievable, unstoppable force. I've got an astrophysicist and a genomicist working for me. I am not nearly as smart as they are, but it's okay, we do different things, right? We have different roles, and we all come together in a really nice way to be able to kind of kick some ass, take a few names. So hire people better than you, don't ever compromise on that. A lot of people talk about getting a mentor and the importance of mentorship, and I totally agree with that. I really believe in that. But I also think you should be a mentor. I think everybody should be a mentor. My boss, Teresa Carlson, who is the highest ranking female executive at Amazon Web Services, she's a global VP of Worldwide Public Sector, as our division is called, spends time with me very generously, because I know how busy she is, to mentor me, and she expects every single person on her team to pay that forward, regardless of gender, but particularly women, because Madeleine Albright, who is my girl crush, by the way, I told my husband, I've had the opportunity to meet Madeleine a couple of times, and I told my husband I would so leave him for her. I love her, and she did say that quote, and she says it often, and she means it. She's tiny but very powerful. So the great thing about Madeleine and a lot of other women who understand how hard it's been for women to come up through the ranks over time know that if you don't pay it forward, everything they've worked for is lost, right? And so we really should pay close attention to doing that. And if you think for 1 second that you don't maybe have much value to add as a mentor, just stop thinking that way, which leads me to my third piece of advice, which is my absolute favorite. I just heard this earlier this week, and I just love it. Confidence is a choice. It's not a thing that happens to you when you achieve some big milestone or get an award or finish a degree. It's truly a choice. And everyone in this room can choose to be confident, and that just builds upon itself. And so if you're sitting back thinking, well, I don't know that I have as much to add, or I don't know that I could be a good mentor, or maybe somebody else would be a better mentor than me. Maybe you're a little worried about taking on the responsibility for giving advice and coaching to someone else. Just tell your brain to shut up and really just choose to be confident, because each one of you has something really incredible and unique to add. And by not adding it to the world, you're really not being your full authentic self, and you're not helping out the rest of us, because we're all in this together. That's the final thing I'll say is knowing that there are so many places in the world today struggling with a lot of really big and hairy problems. But we all live in this society together, and we're all in it together, and so we should all be contributing to it together, if that makes sense. So I'm going to pause there, and Courtney said we needed to be really creative with the way we do Q&A. So what I'd really like to do, I'd like to ask 3 people in the audience. Courtney's idea, not mine, but I'm stealing it forevermore. If there are 3 people in the audience who feel like they really have something they want to share, or they thought this talk or Courtney's talk was particularly interesting in some element to them, or you have a question you want to ask, I'd really love for you to actually come up on stage and join me, and then use the microphone at the podium so we can have a little conversation about it. 3 people.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. You got to do it. 3 people. You got to do it. You got to do it. Fantastic, and we've got 3. Okay, terrific.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Paula!
Right. All right, so what I'd like you to do is just come up to the mic, and I'd like you to introduce yourself, your name, and just something interesting about yourself. Oh, perfect. And then whether it's a question or a comment, just go. Do your thing.
Okay. My name is Katina Worsham, and I work for GE. I'm a program manager there. So we were chatting, a couple of girlfriends and I, texting each other. You speak very eloquently, not being a technologist, but you know a lot about technology and the way you present yourself. So how did you get to that point? Do you surround yourself with people that are the experts or the SMEs and then learn from them? Or how did you become so, I guess, confident and eloquent in the way you speak?
Oh, you are so kind. Those are very kind words, first of all, so thank you very much. I ask a lot of questions. I read a lot. There are product announcements that come out pretty much every second day at my company at AWS that are pretty technical in nature about new features or services that we're adding to our product set, and I read them religiously. I take every opportunity for training that my schedule will allow, and I talk to folks on my team and on the broader team often about the customer stories that they have, how our technology is being used, and I kind of dive deep into a lot of really detailed questions about how it's being used, about what services they're using and how they're using them, to give me the ability to kind of bubble that back up into what I think is a compelling story. But it's the product of a lot of years of work. When I was at GSA, and I was asked by the administrator to start up to take over the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program and to start up a digital service. I'd never coded, so I went online and started learning, because why not? You have to be able to speak the same language as the people that you're interacting with. But yeah, it's, I'm a really experiential learner, so for me, the hands-on component and really diving deep into it is an important piece. So I think it's also important to know what your learning style is. But yeah, it's work. It's work.
And one more thing, just to let you know, you don't say a lot in your speaking. I listen to that because I'm trying to be more conscious when I speak, not saying but just want to give you that feedback as well.
Oh, that's really good feedback. Thank you. Because as you might have noticed, I could talk for a long time. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
So awesome. I love your shirt.
Oh,
I
thank
love this
you.
shirt.
Oh, thanks. We'll talk.
Katina, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Christina Hollingsworth. A few people know me. I represent #GSD. For those that don't know what it stands for Get Shit Done. Okay? And now I happen to work at GE, and we use that at GE. So one of the things that I'm doing at GE is really taking it on with authenticity and authentic leadership, right? So you can probably see I exude that, and Katina's on my team, and we have a number of people adopting that. So when I was listening to you speak, you just, you came across an authentic leader to me.
Well, thank you.
The way that you hire people better than yourself, and couldn't agree more. My question for you is, what are you doing, or your organization doing, to bring authentic leadership into Amazon?
Oh gosh, wow.
Oh, you got a microphone.
Thank you.
You have a microphone. Keep that one. You may need it.
Okay, so there's this really awesome guy on my team. His name is Jed Sundwall, and he runs our open data program. And he has this really great maxim that I've adopted, which is don't be full of shit. So I try very hard to make sure I don't say things that aren't true. I try really, really hard when I make a commitment to keep it. It doesn't always work, especially at a place where Amazon is a large company, but by far the fastest company I've ever worked at, large or small, and things come at you really fast, and so it's inevitable that you miss things. And so maybe my Canadianness helps me with this, because I've gotten really good at saying I'm sorry, right? Like if I fuck up, I'm gonna come out and say, I'm really sorry I let you down, and how do I make it right, and I'll make sure I won't do it again. But I own my mistakes, and I make my fair share of them. But I just try and be really honest about that and deal with people at that level, and it seems to really work out.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks for coming up on stage.
A pleasure. I'm Casey Quinlan. I think everybody here knows me pretty much, but I'm a professional troublemaker in the healthcare
Brilliant.
healthcare division from the patient row. I mean, there are many other parts to me,
Good.
but that's my main part.
Good for you.
Now, I have never been more convinced than this week, and there's a lot of stuff that happened this week. We won't go into it, but a lot of things this week have aligned to tell me that technology is what is going to save the fucking world. I mean, seriously, from my point of view, humanity will be saved by technology if we don't screw it up. But I was fascinated when you said that there was a genomics guy on this innovation team with you. So two questions.
Yeah.
Where is Amazon in healthcare? Because I don't know, and I know you guys are on your data side, have to be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And second, I would really love to hear your take on that vicious piece that was, I think it was the New York Times?
It was the New York Times.
Yeah, I read it, and it's like, I really want to talk to somebody from Amazon who's
Yeah.
female about that story. And here you are.
Here I am. Yeah. Those are great questions. So I'll start.
I'm also a journalist, and I'm willing to call out my compadres when they really cork it.
It's not my I read that article and it sounded so foreign to me. It's not been my experience at all. And I'll tell you what happened in our group, our division. Among the leadership team, this email trail started The Saturday night after that article appeared on this, it was posted either the Friday night or early the Saturday, and that Saturday evening, an email trail started around our leadership team, and it started with a woman named Emily, who heads up our sales operations, and she has 2 very young children. I didn't know this term before. She calls them Irish twins. They were 2 kids born just inside of a year apart, and she works really hard. And she sent this email that said, I've never been in a workplace where I have felt more supported doing what I need to do for my job and my family at the same time. And then a guy named Peter Moore, who is our sales lead in Australia, well, actually now all of Asia Pacific, and he had cancer last year. And he sent a note saying, I had time to balance my job with my chemo treatments and my therapy and my recovery, and never have I felt more supported. And it just snowballed from there. I mean, there were a dozen stories that were shared. Look, in a large company, there are always going to be challenges. And in a company growing as fast as ours, you know, do some people get promoted into, you know, roles where maybe they're not yet skilled enough to be a really great manager of a high-performing team? I'm sure that happens. And so I'm not going to say there's like no truth in it, but I will say it seemed incredibly foreign to me. And on the very good side, it spurred a conversation across our entire organization about how we can do even better. I know there's been, since that article appeared, there's been some back and forth, you know, of our company and the New York Times about what's true and what sources are reliable and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, you know, whatever. Just take the spirit and the intent of how can we be the very best place in the world to work? How can we give our teams and our employees the very best experience and the most opportunity they have to make the change they want to see in the world? And how can we make sure that our customers drive that as well and are part of that shared experience? I think that's what I'd like to see. And I think I love working there. I've never cried at my desk. I've never cried at my desk. There's an article that talked about people crying at their desks. I'm like, anyway, but back to, does that answer?
No, that was perfect. But open science, open data, and
Yeah.
healthcare, where are you guys in that? Because I know you've probably got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, there's a lot. We have a healthcare life sciences division. Health tech is a really big thing these days. Companies that are built entirely in the cloud and leveraging the cloud for, health outcomes that wouldn't have been possible before. We do a lot of work in precision medicine. We do a lot of work in genomics. We support some of the biggest data sets, genomics data sets in the world right now. TCGA and ICGC are coming onto our platform right now. They're both really important, very large genomics data sets. And we're giving restricted access. That's sensitive information. People's DNA is really sensitive information, right? So we have a very secure platform, and we're giving restricted access to researchers and scientists who need to access that data, and giving them a global platform to collaborate around that data.
I'll give you a hashtag to go and look at later.
Please.
Hashtag we are not waiting.
We are not
the
waiting.
citizen
Hashtag
science
we are not
component.
waiting. That is awesome. I love
yeah.
it. Yeah, citizen science is enormous. I think the opportunities in healthcare and in science, just look at what's happening with entrepreneurs around the world today, where even 5 or 7 years ago, to start a business that was built on a technology platform, you needed to start with an awful lot of money and buy a bunch of servers in order to configure those and have the capability to serve something over the internet. And now you can start with, well, frankly, for anyone who's an entrepreneur in the room, aws.amazon.com/activate. It's our program for entrepreneurs. It gives free credits for up to 2 years for anyone who's starting a business. You can get started for free. That is an incredibly democratizing force in the world. Small d democratizing, it's the democratization of ideas and access to opportunity, because you don't need capital in order to do that in the world today.
Brilliant.
Can I say thank you? Thank you. I'll just say one more thing. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll just say one more thing, because Teresa would be really disappointed if I didn't. Please.
What was the web address for the entrepreneur?
aws.amazon.com/activate. And if I'm wrong in that URL, just Google AWS Activate and you'll find it. Same with Educate. The Educate program, it's free and available to any post-secondary institution, and with a little bit of discussion about how to do it with high schools as well. So AWS Educate if you're interested in it. And Teresa Carlson, my boss, who says hello to all of you today. She couldn't be here and wanted to be, but she says hello to all of you here today, and thanks for coming. Started something at Amazon that's called #SmartIsBeautiful. And so it's great stories of women who are succeeding in the world. And so if you could #SmartIsBeautiful, that would be awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Woo! Lena. Thank you, Lena. You are lovely. You are lovely. So here it is. I think it's 10, 15-ish. We've said words like genomics, extragalactic. I didn't use that word yesterday. And I don't think I used it the day before. And we've also said things like horket, like horket. I have not used that recently either. But we're rolling. Like, this is good. This is really good. And so what I want you to do now is remember that lovely people like Lena is just part of this, and that they're lovely people filling this room. And so to be very, very purposeful right now in getting a little buzzed, just like a little buzzed, right? Just a little imaginary drink, and then just go talk to some people. Just walk up to them and be like, you look interesting. Tell me something interesting. You know, or hey, you know, you got a story. I want to hear your story. And then they get down into it, right? Don't talk about the stuff you think you're supposed to talk about. Talk about the stuff you want to talk about, right? Are we good? I'll just tell you this really quickly on the learning. It is so important to be learning something new. And one of the best ways you can help yourself break into that is to sign yourself up for something that you've never done before, like tap dancing. You know, and you'll be in there with all the like 70-year-old women who are looking for something to do in the afternoon. And if you're like me, you'll be terrible. I just started an organization called Mother Pluckers to learn how to play guitar because I've always wanted to. And there are all these other mothers that want to too. So I thought, like, great, Mother Pluckers. Like, let's get together. We'll learn it together. I'm terrible. I can play one song. It's bad, but it's good. It's so good because I remember what it is to just like I don't know anything, right? So like be a little mother pluckery, right? Stand up, walk across the room. Don't just be with the cadre you showed up with, and then disperse. And like that woman right there in that cool suit, I love your dress. It's awesome. She's got a story. You got to go find out her story. What's your name? Cindy. What? Hoyt? Cindy Hoyt. If you don't know Cindy Hoyt's story by the time we come back, you're missing something. All right, break, and we'll be back here at 10:30, I think. 10:45. 10:45.